Have you ever been a fan of something for years, whether it's cartoons, comics, or books, only to be disappointed by its on-screen adaptation? That's how I felt about the Snyderverse and the DCEU. As a longtime DC fan, I was excited when the movies were announced, but as the franchise progressed, I found myself increasingly frustrated and let down by every release. But here's the thing, I eventually learned to accept it, flaws and all, because I had to, in order to be able to start this new chapter of DC movies without being jaded about the past. So how did I go from being borderline done with DC movies to someone who learned to accept the DCEU? Well, I figured out some things along the way that helped me appreciate the movies despite their shortcomings, and I want to share those things with you today. In this video, I'm going to talk about the specific elements of the Snyderverse that initially turned me off, but that I've come to appreciate over time. I'm also going to talk about how these movies fit into a larger DC universe and why that matters more than anything else, and how accepting these things will let us better appreciate newer projects in the future. So if you've been let down by the DCEU or the Snyderverse, this one is for you. First off, let's address the elephant in the room. The Snyderverse has had its fair share of problems.
What does that mean? Why did you say that name?
Find him! Save Martha!
The storytelling has been uneven, the characters have been inconsistent, and the movies have struggled to find the right tone. As a longtime DC fan, it was frustrating to see some of my favorite characters mishandled on the big screen. But when it came to Superman, I actually found myself conflicted because there were aspects that I enjoyed and aspects that I hated. The writing often failed to give him the hopeful and inspiring qualities that he's known for in the comics. Instead, the Snyder version of Superman seemed more brooding and isolated, which I felt was like a departure from the character's true essence. But I began to appreciate the little touches that Cavill brought to the role. Despite the writing not always being the strongest, Cavill embodied the character of Superman in a way that felt genuine and believable. One example, in Man of Steel, the scene where Superman reveals his identity to Lois.
My father believed that if the world found out who I really was, they'd reject me.
Is a standout moment. It shows the vulnerability and humanity of the character, which Cavill played with great sincerity. Similarly, in Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice, Cavill's portrayal of Superman's conflict and internal struggle added a layer of depth that made the character more relatable. Through Cavill's performance, I came to see this Superman as a more complex and flawed version of the character, which made him endearing. While the writing could have been stronger, I appreciate the effort that Cavill put into making the role his own and giving us a fresh take on Superman. Moreover, I found that the portrayal of Superman shared similarities with the Injustice storyline, where Superman also struggles with the weight of being a hero and the difficult decisions he has to make. The death of Zod was a head scratcher and what overall was a solid film. This was meant to provide more complexity to the character, but I found it conflicting in the follow-up film wherein he criticized Batman's method, yet employed the same aggressiveness by killing Zod. In fact, not killing Zod would have added more depth to the character, and instead allowed him to become someone that fans can look up to. While some fans criticized the DCEU Superman for being too dark and brooding, there were some highlight moments that gave us glimmers of hope that this character could be developed into something better. Interactions with the rest of the league like Aquaman and Batman explored the idea of him being someone who's considered the best of these heroes. That being said, the writing and direction need to have done more to make Superman a beacon of hope and inspiration for audiences. In the comics, Superman is often portrayed as the ultimate symbol of goodness and righteousness, but this aspect of his character was not emphasized enough in the Snyder films. In my opinion, the DCEU could have benefited from a more hopeful and optimistic portrayal of Superman, one that more closely aligns with his comic book counterpart. While I appreciate the complexity and depth of this version of the character, I think that they missed an opportunity to fully capture the essence of what makes Superman such an iconic hero. I understand that Snyder had a long-term storyline of what he wanted to build with Superman, but that could have been saved for a follow-up story arc after an endgame style film, which would have brought characters into a darker world that fans would have appreciated and resonated with if the characters had been more well used as a symbol for good in earlier appearances. Nevertheless though, Henry Cavill's performance as Superman was a bright spot in the DCEU, and it's clear that he put a lot of heart and soul into the role. Through his portrayal, I was able to find new appreciation for the character and had hopes that they would continue his story. But it's not all bad news. The Snyderverse also had some strong entries, like Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and Shazam. These films also brought a new sense of fun and adventure to the franchise, and they showed that there's more to DC than just dark and brooding superheroes.
She had fled an arranged marriage, left her whole world behind.
But in my father's lighthouse, she found something unexpected. And my father found the love of his life.
Aquaman was more lighthearted and told a story completely different than anything else we've seen in comic book movies, adding more of a fantasy setting in a real and grounded way. We had introductions to different species, kingdoms, and settings that really served to expand the world of DC without having to shove an excessive amount of connective scenes that we were used to. The first Wonder Woman film expanded the character of Wonder Woman during World War I and was a prequel, but also a solid introduction to her as a character, including her morals and values as a hero, which was pretty awesome, and also why some of the backtracking in her characterization in the sequel irked a lot of fans. Shazam was another one of those highlight films that was produced on a lower budget compared to some others, but was more lighthearted and family friendly, yet still had a lot of solid action and felt like it wasn't a betrayal of the character. Even the sequel connected with a lot of audiences, but to be honest, because it was one of the remnants of the DCEU and it was released after James Gunn's announcement for the new DCEU, I think it suffered both in the box office and with critics. But I've had talks with people, skimmed comments of people who watched the second film, and most thoroughly enjoyed it. It's definitely not perfect, but it was well received overall by audiences. For me though, a highlight of the DCEU was actually the Peacemaker series. It's one of the more compelling pieces of television I've seen in a long time. Is that because James Gunn wrote it, or is it because of John Cena?
Some tank shell.
Why not just the grenade?
Grenade blows up like 2 people.
How many people does this blow up?
I don't know. I invented it this morning.
What?
Eat peace, mother.
I don't know. To be honest with you, I think it was a standout show in terms of expanding the DC world while still having a self-contained story and showing that it's okay to have shows about heroes who are rough around the edges, and shows that don't always have to be defined as family friendly to be enjoyable and fit in the cinematic universe.
How about a magic trick? I'm gonna make this pencil disappear.
Finally, one thing that really helped me to accept the DCEU was realizing that there is more to DC than just the movies. DC has an expansive and rich history that extends beyond the big screen, including comics, TV shows, animated series, video games, and more. While the Snyderverse may not have always captured the true essence of DC as we'd like it to, there are plenty of other DC properties that do justice to the characters and their story. Take for instance the fan favorite animated series such as Batman the Animated Series, Justice League Unlimited, and Young Justice, which are widely regarded as some of the best adaptations of DC characters ever produced. These shows captured the essence of DC with their compelling storytelling, nuanced characters, and breathtaking action sequences. The comics themselves offer an unparalleled depth of storytelling spanning decades and pushing the boundaries of what superhero stories can be. And we can't forget about the awesome Arkham video games, which received high marks for its exceptional storytelling and immersive gameplay. By exploring other facets of the DC universe, we can appreciate the strengths of the DCEU while acknowledging its shortcomings. Despite its flaws, the DCEU has given us iconic moments like Wonder Woman's No Man Land scene, the epic fight between Batman and Superman, and the introduction of Aquaman and Shazam. The truth is that the world of DC is everywhere, from comics to TV to movies and collectibles. There are tons of fans who love these characters and have strong opinions, and that's why a bad movie can hurt us as fans. But I feel even in the worst of these films, there were strong moments that made us really appreciate them. While accepting the Snyderverse was not an easy thing for me, it was one that ultimately led to greater appreciation of the characters and story of the DC universe. By focusing on the positives and looking beyond the flaws, I was able to see the potential that the DCU had to offer, and look at the DCU in a more positive way. So to everyone frustrated out there with the DCU, I think maybe it's time to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. While things weren't perfect with the DCEU, not by a long shot, by looking more at the positives and learning from the negatives, we can continue to enjoy these characters in the future, especially with the new DCEU movies coming out. What are your thoughts? Do you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and as always, take care and have an awesome day. And if you're looking ahead to new movies in the DCU, check this video out right here.